Signs the universe gives that your life is about to change. Have you ever had the feeling that something is about to happen, but you cannot quite explain what? As if the air feels different. As if your reality feels off. Slightly out of place. Sometimes it is not a crisis. Sometimes it is the universe preparing a shift that can completely redefine your timeline. The truth is, almost no one teaches us how to recognize life cycles. We grow up believing that stability is the ultimate goal. But life is not static, it is built on transitions. And here is what is most interesting. Before any major transformation, there are signs. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Maybe you've been feeling a restlessness, a discomfort you cannot explain. Maybe your intuition feels stronger. Repeated numbers start appearing. Strange coincidences, unexpected encounters. And you might even think, I'm overthinking this. But what if you are not? What if this is your inner wisdom trying to prepare you for something greater? In this video, you're going to understand the main signs that your life is about to change and how to act with faith, confidence, and alignment with your purpose when they appear. Because recognizing the signs is one thing. Knowing how to navigate them is something entirely different. Life is made of cycles and transitions. If you pay close attention, you will realize that life has never been static. Everything unfolds in life cycles. Seasons begin and end. Phases emerge and close. People enter and leave. Transitions are not always announced clearly. Sometimes they arrive quietly, almost imperceptibly. And when the shift finally happens, people say that came out of nowhere. But the truth is it almost never comes out of nowhere. Before any major transformation, there is an invisible movement happening behind the scenes. A subtle restlessness, a discomfort you cannot explain, a strange feeling in your chest. It is as if your inner wisdom is whispering while the ego insists on keeping everything exactly the same. We tend to ignore these signals, especially when they seem too small to take seriously. But here is the simple and profound truth. Every major turning point is preceded by a silent process. Sometimes your energy shifts before your circumstances do. You start feeling that something is different even when, externally, nothing has changed yet. And the more you resist transitions, the more abrupt the shift tends to be, which leads to an unavoidable question. What if there is something inside you that already knows exactly what is coming? There is an inner wisdom beyond logic. Not everything that is real can be placed into a spreadsheet or proven with charts. There is an inner wisdom that does not depend on arguments. It simply knows. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt heavy energy, even though no one said a word? That is your sixth sense at work. The mind may doubt, but intuition rarely makes mistakes. We were trained to trust only logic, only what is visible, measurable, provable. But life does not function that way alone. There are insights that appear out of nowhere. Decisions that seem illogical, yet later make perfect sense within your timeline. It is as if something greater is arranging the pieces while you can only see part of the board. If you learn to silence the external noise, you begin to hear the voice of your heart more clearly. Here is something practical. Set aside 10 minutes a day in silence. No phone, just observe your thoughts. Write down what arises, especially ideas that feel charged with energy. Many times, what we call coincidence is simply refined perception. And when you begin to trust that, you realize that feeling is also a legitimate form of knowing. Discomfort is a required part of growth. Let's be honest. Every transformation brings some level of discomfort. There is no growth without rupture. Think about a muscle being strengthened. It must be stretched, almost torn, in order to expand. Emotionally, financially, spiritually, it works the same way. Shift requires that something old be left behind. The problem is the ego hates losing control. It prefers familiar pain over the risk of the new. But resisting transitions only prolongs the suffering. When you accept that letting go is part of the process, the pain does not disappear, but stops being your enemy. It becomes your teacher, and that completely changes your energy in the situation. Look back at your timeline. Were not the most painful phases also the ones that generated the greatest expansion? Maybe the restlessness you feel today is the beginning of a leap. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" That small shift in perspective already begins to transform the experience and prepares you to recognize the next signs. Disidentification with your current reality. One of the first signs of a shift is disidentification. Suddenly, you look at your routine, your job, even certain friendships, and think, what am I still doing here? Externally, nothing has changed. But internally, it feels like you have already crossed one of the major transitions of your life cycles. It is like wearing clothes that once fit perfectly and now feel tight. At first, it is subtle, a mild discomfort, a restlessness you try to ignore. You go to the same places, do the same things, but the energy no longer fits. Conversations that once excited you now exhaust you. Environments that once felt familiar start to feel strange. The more you force yourself to feel what you used to feel, the more you realize something inside you has changed. This is the point where your inner wisdom has already transitioned, even if your external reality has not caught up yet. The voice of your heart begins to whisper that there is something more, but the ego tries to convince you to stay for the sake of security. If this is happening to you, it may not be a crisis. It may be transformation in progress. And when that feeling intensifies, something even stronger usually appears. A sense of urgency for something new. After disidentification, something more intense tends to arise. Urgency. It is not just dissatisfaction. It feels almost physical. A need to move. You start researching courses in completely different fields. You feel the desire to move cities, change lifestyles, sometimes even change social circles. This restlessness is not random. It is fuel for your next transformation. Your intuition begins pointing toward new directions. Specific books show up. You might suddenly feel drawn to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. As if something is expanding your mental timeline before the concrete shift happens. And here is something practical. When this energy of movement appears, do not ignore it. Make a micro move. Sign up for a short course. Attend a different event. Have a conversation outside your usual bubble. Faith does not mean waiting passively. It means acting with confidence, even without full guarantees. And when you begin to act, something interesting happens. The universe responds. Synchronicities. When a major shift is approaching, synchronicities begin to appear. You think about someone and they text you. You ask an internal question and later that same day, hear the exact answer in a random conversation. It is not magic. It is energetic alignment. The pieces begin to fit together in an almost cinematic way. Another curious detail is repeated numbers. You glance at the clock and see 1111. 2222, 0333. It may seem like coincidence, but many interpret this as a sign to pay attention, a call from your inner wisdom to be fully present. It is as if your sixth sense is being activated to notice what once went unseen. If you want to test this, keep a record for 1 week. Write down unexpected encounters, phrases that feel like answers, improbable situations. You will begin to see a pattern in your timeline. And when synchronicities increase, it usually means transformation is already knocking at your door. Unexpected endings. Sometimes when we ignore subtle signs, the shift comes as a rupture, a sudden dismissal, the end of a relationship, a project that simply collapses. These unexpected endings hurt because they shake our sense of control. The ego goes into shock, asking, why now? But from the perspective of life cycles, every ending is also a transition. Nothing closes without something reorganizing behind the scenes. Often, your inner wisdom had already been sending signals. That persistent discomfort, that quiet restlessness, but you chose to remain. So life moves for you. That does not mean it does not hurt. It does. But there is a difference between loss and redirection. Sometimes what looks like destruction is accelerated transformation. And shortly after these endings, something interesting often emerges. Clarity, insights, and internal messages. After ruptures or major transitions, insights often appear like flashes. Ideas that come out of nowhere. decisions that suddenly feel obvious. A strong inner sense of this is it. Not euphoria, quiet certainty. It is your inner wisdom reorganizing your timeline with a new energy available. Some people receive these messages through symbolic dreams. Others hear ordinary phrases that feel like direct answers to their doubts. Have you ever watched a random video or had a casual conversation and felt your sixth sense activate instantly? That is intuition. It does not shout, but when it speaks, it is precise. Create the habit of recording these moments. Keep a notebook for perceptions, ideas, sensations. Ask yourself, is this coming from the fear of the ego or from the voice of my heart? Over time, you learn to distinguish the two. And when these insights begin to repeat, it usually means you are already crossing a deeper transformation than you realize. Timeline shifts through choices. Imagine that every decision you make is like choosing a new book from an infinite shelf. Each book has a beginning, middle, and end. When you change one choice, even a small one, you alter your timeline. New people enter. Others leave. Opportunities arise. The shift begins in the invisible, then materializes. Sometimes you feel you no longer recognize your own reality. Internally, you have already made the transition. Externally, the scene has not updated yet. This identification happens because your energy is aligned with a different version of yourself. It is as if your future is pulling you forward, while your past tries to hold your arm. Here is something powerful. Small decisions create major transformations. Change one habit for 30 days. Daily reading, exercise, new content, explore mindset, expanding works like Think and Grow Rich, and observe how your perception shifts. With each conscious choice, you strengthen confidence in your own direction. And once you understand that, there is one final tool that becomes essential. Faith as a navigation tool. When everything begins to shift, one tool becomes indispensable. Faith, not passive faith, active faith, the kind that walks alongside confidence. Because let us be honest, crossing transitions requires courage. You do not always see the final destination, but you feel that there is a purpose guiding your steps. Faith does not eliminate discomfort. It transforms your posture toward it. Instead of fighting life cycles, you learn to flow with them. What seems negative today may be reorganizing your timeline for something greater tomorrow. Sometimes transformation looks like chaos, but it is only the old structure being dismantled to make room for expansion. A creative exploration of this broader perspective appears in the series The Good Place, which plays with the idea that there may be more happening than we can perceive. What if life is not only about surviving, but about awakening? When you act with faith, even without guarantees, something aligns internally, and from that alignment, clarity emerges. Conclusion. Now let me ask you, how many of these signs have you already experienced without recognizing them? How many times did intuition whisper, while the ego shouted louder? Maybe the discomfort you feel today is not a problem. Maybe it is an announcement, a call to cross a new phase of your life cycles with greater awareness. The truth is, shift does not ask for permission. It arrives when your timeline demands expansion. The question is not whether you will go through transitions. It is how you will cross them, with resistance or with faith and confidence in your inner wisdom. Because when you learn to listen to the voice of your heart, even unexpected endings stop feeling like punishment and begin to feel like redirection. So let me ask you directly, will you keep ignoring the signs, or will you start acting on them? Will you treat restlessness as anxiety or as preparation for transformation? And what if this phase is exactly what is aligning you with your true purpose? If this message resonated with you, if it brought clarity, leave a comment sharing what impacted you most, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Here we talk about energy, growth, awareness, and everything that helps you evolve with greater lucidity and courage. This may be the phase that changes everything. The only question is, are you ready to follow the signs?